friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Elenbaas, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Today we'll be talking about hyssop, an herb of the month you'll find very helpful this time of year with coughs and colds going around and generally speaking coldness. This is an herb to add to your medicine cabinet, to add to your herbal tea shelf with all your bottles and jars because it's a good one. Before we dive into today's content, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please take a second, click the subscribe button, click receive all notifications, and while you're at it, go to our website, skyhouseherbs.com, and check out our Kickstarter. Before we look at the Kickstarter, I just want to point your attention to this little thing right here. And thank you all for listening to this podcast. I was rated on Good Pods in the top 50 podcasts in the genre of alternative medicine. And I'm just so grateful. You can click on this link directly from the website and you can see how this podcast ranks and other ones that are similar. So you can find other podcasts to follow and listen to for all your alternative medicine needs. From the Sky House Herb School page, you can see on the top tab here, we've got our courses, including our Herbal Foundations Apprenticeship, which starts in April of 2026, and the Year 2 Herbal Integration and Practice, which starts in September 2026. Both of these courses are available at a discounted rate through our yearly annual Kickstarter. And right here on this top tab, if you click on Kickstarter, it will send you here to the Nightlight Astrology Kickstarter page. And for those of you who are not aware of this, my husband and I run our businesses together. They're like sister businesses. And so Nightlight Astrology hosts our annual Kickstarter, but my herbal apprenticeship courses are listed here. So if you're interested in studying astrology, this is a great way to grab either some courses or to grab rewards like the Astrology of 2026 calendar. But along here on the left side, you can scroll down and find the herbal apprenticeship courses, the Herbal Foundations apprenticeship course for $7.99. Click on that. You can learn more. And also you can grab a seat in the Year 2 Herbal Apprenticeship course listed right here. And our early bird rate is $9.99. So you will save $200 on these courses by backing our project. So click here to pledge. Your payment will come out at the beginning of the new year. And then that will grab you a seat in either the Year 1 or the Year 2 program. Your pledges help us to keep our prices affordable. It allows us to offer need-based tuition options for all of my herbal courses, as well as for my husband's astrology courses, which allows people on fixed income, single parents, people that are on disability to study with us. Check that out. See if there is a program that you're interested in. Thank you so much. This month, our herbal spotlight is on hyssop. And this is an herb that I feel like everyone knows about, but some of us, even myself for a long time, didn't know what to do with it. And I also want to just say at the very beginning here that there are two hyssops that often get confused with one another. One is anise hyssop, and then the other one is Hyssop officinalis. And that is the one we're going to be focusing on. Anise hyssop, which is a lovely plant. It has that signature licorice anise flavor. And while they're both in the mint family, they are quite different in their aromatic profiles and what they've been used for. So we're going to focus today on hyssop, just not the anise, but the regular hyssop, and talk about what you can do with this lovely plant. What I love about hyssop is that it is a very easy herb to grow. So if you're planning out your spring 2026 gardening plot and what you're going to grow, add this to your must-have list. I also love that this herb has a lot of ancient roots dating back to Egypt and Rome, and it even has some references in the Bible to this specific plant. Hyssop in general, just to give you a broad brush stroke, is a very bitter, aromatic, warming, digestive, and lung tonic. And we're going to take it apart bit by bit. And in today's episode, what I'll share with you is some of the history and historical uses and references for this amazing aromatic plant. I'll tell you how it came over here to North America. And we'll also talk about its energetics, its taste, its use in folk traditional herbalism. We'll talk about what it has been shown to do in science. And then I'll share with you some of my favorite easy to prepare recipes for using hyssop for yourself, for your home, because it actually has some great uses as a home cleaner, if you will. And then also how you could, offer it and recommend it for friends and family. So let's dive in now. Let's start with a little bit about this plant and who it is. So Hyssopus officinalis, its botanical name, is a member of the Lamiaceae or the mint family. And as a mint family herb, it has a ton of volatile oils and aromatics, which makes it a very warming and a very diffusive herb. This is so helpful when things get stuck. And so some of its primary actions are for cold, damp stuckness, either in the digestive system and also in the lungs. Let's dive into the history of this plant because I find this to be so fascinating. Historically, hyssop was used as a strewing herb or a cleansing herb. It was often used in big batches of tea, and then the mop or rags were then soaked in this hyssop tea and used to clean a home. And this was because not only of its aromatic qualities making the house smell good, but it's also a wonderful disinfectant. There's also a passage in the Bible, and I'm going to read it from my notes, in Psalm 51:7, where it says, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." And this is probably relating to the widespread outbreak of leprosy during that time. And we know that this herb is a wonderful antiviral, antibacterial, antiseptic. But also it was referring to its use in temple worship, to clean the temples, to clean the seats, to clean these cathedrals. It was used in ancient Egypt as well for cleansing purposes, for cleansing spaces as a burning herb and also as a strewing herb. And again, strewing just means an herb that was used in water to cleanse and bathe ritual spaces. There are some records of this herb being used in Egypt, and Chaeremon the Stoic, he was a superintendent of the Great Alexandria Library. He said that priests in Egypt would eat hyssop and bread as a method of purifying the food and to make it suitable for their austere diet. Also in history, Roman Emperor Charles I created an edict that hyssop should be grown in every garden because of his own health plagues that were remedied by using hyssop. So they had these physic gardens that held all of the different medicines for the church, or at that time, I guess it was at the temple or the monasteries where the priests and the priestesses would look over the plants. And so at this time, he said, I want this in every single garden. So it was actually grown and propagated in many medical gardens throughout ancient Greece and ancient Rome. By 1400, hyssop was relatively well established throughout European and English gardens, and then it was brought over to North America by colonists. Thomas Jefferson actually lists hyssop among the plants that he wanted in his kitchen garden, and this was recorded in 1790. So we know this herb was being used both as a culinary herb, but also as a medicinal plant in many kitchen gardens that were found in early America. I also wanted to mention something that was said by Hildegard von Bingen, who was a Christian mystic who lived in Europe, and her work and her connection with plants and music and healing touches me very deeply. So I wanted to read this passage about what Hildegard says about hyssop. She says, if one eats hyssop often, one cleans the sick makers and the stinkiness out of the foamy juices, and it makes the liver active and cleanses the lungs somewhat. But if the liver is sick because of the person's sadness, the person should cook young chicken with hyssop before the sickness increases. The person should often eat this hyssop and chicken, and should also eat fresh hyssop laid in wine and drink the wine. And what I love about this is that what Hildegard is doing is she's very well describing these sickness makers. And, one of the sickness makers is our emotional state. And so she lists here specifically sadness. Um, if the sickness is arriving in a person because of their sadness, one of the things that hyssop does in my experience, I'm actually drinking it right now. I was like, I'm going to make myself some hyssop tea. Well, it says linden flowers. This is an old label, but I made myself some hyssop tea so I could drink it while I was talking about it. And I like to do that sometimes. It's a nice way to connect with the plant live with you while I'm talking about it. So in drinking this hyssop, what I notice in my body is that it has a very upward moving energy. And what I think Hildegard is pointing to with this very aromatic, warming, bitter, upward moving, clearing plant is that when we have emotions that are very downward and heavy, this is an herb that specifically helps to lift the spirit and helps to lift those heavier humors or those heavier substances in the body. And she says here, it makes the liver active and cleanses the lungs somewhat. So, what she's saying here too is when there's phlegm and heaviness and stickiness in the body, whether of emotional nature or by the biliousness or maybe the anger of the liver that gets trapped as heat that goes inward and can get stuck and ferment. It helps to cleanse these foamy juices. Let's talk a bit about its energetics and its taste. I want to just take you into this plant so you can get a sense of what it will work with and what it won't work with. This herb is an aromatic bitter. And when I say bitter, I mean bitter. It's not an herb that I would ever just like this drink alone. It is a really nice herb for blending. So it is an aromatic bitter, which means that it has warming aromatic volatile oils, which give it a pretty nice flavor overall, kind of minty, tiny bit of a kind of a sweet tone, but overall it has this warm and then it gets bitter and it gets quite astringent and dry. The aromatic volatile oils also give it the energetics of being warming. So this is something to consider when you are adding hyssop to a blend, is that it's going to add warmth to it, which is a nice thing if you're working on coldness, stagnation. You want to increase blood flow and increase activity throughout the body because of its upward and outward directional movement paired with its warming action. It is so nice if you want to get things moving. And I will say, because of its bitter qualities and drying qualities, what works really well with this? Honey, just honey, sweetening honey. And if you don't eat honey, then licorice. If you don't have uncontrolled high blood pressure, I find that a little bit of licorice with the hyssop takes that astringent, drying effect off the tongue and also helps to smooth out a little bit of that bitter flavor. And you know what else is kind of interesting? A little secret herbal trick is that not the opposite flavor of bitter. You would think it's sweet, and sweet can help mask bitter. But if you want to cut bitterness, it's actually the salty flavor that will help you do that. And adding in just a little pinch of sea salt to a bitter blend will really change the bitter profile. Another thing I want to say about this herb and its energetics is that has a short-term moistening effect on the body. So when it hits the lung tissues and the digestive tissues, it pulls moisture to the surface, and that can give you a initial moistening effect. And so if you're using it for a dry cough, initially because it draws moisture to the surface, it can be very soothing, but over time it will dry the system out. So just be aware of that when you're using it. There are secondary actions this herb has, which are important to note when understanding how hyssop works. As Hildegard mentioned, this herb does have an effect on the liver. So if you're looking to aid detoxification, and I think the ancient herbalists and, even its reference in the Bible point to the effect of it being gently detoxifying and also it being clearing of unwanted things. And whether that's pestilence or, the plague, it's clearing things out. And that's partly in the Western system, what we see as the job of the liver. So we can think about, not only does this herb help to clear out disease, but it also helps the liver to detoxify and move out things that our body doesn't need anymore. Hyssop also has an effect on the kidneys and the urinary tract, so it helps to dispel excess fluids in the body by moving them out through the kidneys and bladder. It has a secondary affinity for the cardiovascular system as a circulatory tonic. It's a great short-term immune booster and also fever diffuser. And it has a mild effect on the female reproductive system, not from an estrogenic or hormonal perspective, but more on an energetic coldness pattern. If there is amenorrhea or delayed menses or sluggish or scanty menses, hyssop can be a nice herb to add in to bring more heat, along with something like angelica, and that could be Angelica sinensis or Angelica archangelica, to bring more circulation to the pelvis. I will say that this herb is not ideal for people that tend to run hot. If you're someone that already has heat and you're already irritable, you don't need this herb. This might not be the best fit for you right now. Let's take a minute to talk about emotional patterns and where hyssop fits in really well. We can look at emotional patterns from both the plant spirit perspective. We can look at it from the essential oil or the aromatic perspective, and we can also look at it from the flower essence perspective. So I want to share with you all three. From a plant spirit perspective, this herb, it grows upward, it has jagged edges, and it has these purple flowers, which tell us that it works on the nervous system. But this herb is not a nervous system relaxant, so we don't want to take it to help us fall asleep or to, help us relax. It's more to be an herb that uplifts us. So all of the signatures of this plant tell us about its uplifting quality. I think of it kind of like peppermint because they're cousins. It has this upward, activating, and outward moving energy. So for any emotional pattern like grief or sadness or melancholy, which tends to be inward and downward, hyssop is a great match. I wanted to share something with you from a book on vibrational medicines, and this was written by Deborah Eidson, and she is an aromatherapist as well as an intuitive worker. And this is what she says about hyssop. Hyssop is used to clear away sins, regrets, and worries that are blocking our spiritual progress. When we open our wild hearts to humble, rugged, ageless hyssop, it helps us to improve strength, stamina, energy, attitude, and outlook. It also generates compassion. Hyssop calms the internal struggle of conflicting realities while increasing self-acceptance and the overcoming of unworthiness. It fortifies our resolve to walk our path, supports the courage needed to follow our heart's desire, and builds endurance needed for self-discovery. I think that's pretty neat. And I think this hits on a lot of what other people say about this herb in terms of it being used for stuckness and for melancholy. I love that she says here that it helps to clear out blockages that keep us from moving forward in life. So we'll see this also show up in the flower essence uses. And this is written by David Dalton, who follows the Bach flower essence tradition. And this is what he says about the flower essence of hyssop. He says it's for shame, unworthiness, and internalized guilt, for people who feel unclean or undeserving. One specific indication that I learned about more recently is its association or its use in healing from grief. And I'd never heard this before. And recently I was talking with my friend Sarah, and she was like, yeah, we were covering hyssop in her materia medica class she's taking, and she said the teacher referred to hyssop as an herb for grief. And I was like, you know what, that makes sense because of its upward lifting, cleansing, clearing. And the lungs in Chinese medicine are often associated with grief, and the idea that when we're hit with sudden news, it is really heartbreaking, that our lungs, it's like, it feels like our lungs like get trapped, like we lose our breath, like air is knocked out of us when we hear news of a loved one's passing. And so the lungs in Chinese medicine were the holders of that heart impact and that grief. And it makes sense that this herb, which has such a strong affinity for the lungs and clearing the lungs, would be good for grief that's lingering, and not like fresh grief. For that, I would think of something like maybe rose or a hawthorn, but where the grief is just lingering and you can't take a deep breath because there's such heaviness in the lungs and in the heart. Hyssop would be such a nice one to open up the airways and to help move and process that deep grief. So thank you, Sarah, for sharing that with me. And since she told me that, I've read it now in 3 or 4 different places and have heard it from students in passing that they also have used hyssop for grief with great results. So now that I know this, I'm going to start utilizing this in tea blends that I might make for a client or for myself when experiencing grief and loss. A few other interesting facts about hyssop are its planetary associations. And Nicholas Culpeper associated this plant with Jupiter. And so Jupiter is a planet of expansion. It often rules sort of the open cavities of the body, like the lungs, and it's a planet of opening and expansion. So it makes sense. This herb is such a opening, expanding herb that Culpeper would place it with this. And Sajapapam of the evolutionary school of herbalism, he says that he perceives it as a little bit more mercurial, that it helps to create communication. It opens lines of communication within the body and helps to shift and move things around and stitch things together and take things apart. And I loved that idea too. So we can think of it as being, I would say, probably both Jupiterian and mercurial for that reason. Right now, as we're heading into the colder months here in North America, hyssop is a really nice herb for the lungs. So let's talk a little bit about the specific respiratory reasons and ways to use hyssop for improving lung health. One of hyssop's standout actions is as a stimulant expectorant, which means that it thins mucus and it stimulates the body to cough it, release it, and get it out. This is really good if you have kind of one of those dry coughs where there's sticky mucus. It's like you can feel it in there, but your body isn't able to expel or get it out of the system. Think of it as kind of baked down mucus. So think about it like in the deep recesses of the lungs, the heat, it has been sitting there and it's kind of baked down, and it really can get in there, lift it up, thin it out so you can cough it out. The way that it does this is sort of twofold. First, it's the aromatic volatile oils. These help to thin and break the mucus down. Then we have these bitter compounds, which help to stimulate the lungs to secrete more fluids. These fluids are also helpful for moistening the lungs and helping unstick that sticky stuff so that it can be expelled, expectorated, coughed up, and removed out. Again, it's important to note that the moistening effects are only temporary in the lungs, but long term, this herb will overall have a drying effect. So here are 4 specific ways you could use this herb hyssop for your lungs. One is for hoarseness. If you have hoarseness in the voice and just sort of a hoarse, dry cough, think about this herb. If you have wheezy or spasmodic coughs where your coughing gets stuck and you have a little bit of a wheezing quality in the lungs, or a child who has wheezing and rattling in their lungs, this is a really nice herb. The third reason would be for post-viral coughs, so maybe post-COVID or just your typical common cold. When you've got that residue that won't clear, hyssop is a great one to add into a tea blend. And then the fourth one is just that lingering dry cough that just won't go away. Beyond just its respiratory uses, you can use this herb in any of your fever support blends. One of my favorite combinations is a very old classic fever tea recipe, which is 3 herbs. It's elderflowers, yarrow, and peppermint leaves, and equal parts. And you just put these together. I use this one probably the most out of all of my tea blends that I use during cold and flu season. And this is really good for helping the body mount that healthy fever response, to open up the pores and then to move the heat out. It's like throwing logs on the internal fire of the immune system and then letting the smoke move out through the chimneys. So it's just amazing at helping the body do its own work in processing fevers, colds, flus, and things like that. Just add hyssop into that blend. So you can have equal parts of those 4 herbs, and I'll include the recipe in the description below if you want to jot it down. And that will make a nice tasting herbal tea that you can use. I would add in some honey and add in something a little bit sweet, agave if you don't use honey, and that will take a little bit of the bitter taste out of the blend. And going back to the respiratory thing, one piece I wanted to mention is that this herb was also historically used for asthma and for difficulty breathing. And if you're someone who has difficulty with asthma or seasonal asthma with allergies, hyssop is a really nice herb to add into your bronchiolytic or bronchodilating blend. Think of it pairing really well with OSHA and maybe a little bit of elecampane. Hyssop blends really nice with those herbs, even with lobelia, to help as a bronchodilator and to help the lungs get nice full deep breaths in. And then one last use that's kind of maybe less heard of is its use as a topical agent. And this actually comes from Nicholas Culpeper. And he says it is used to take the black and blue spots and marks that come by strokes, bruises, or falls away that much resembles the color of the flower. So we can use it not only for internal heat, but we can use it to help bring out bruises and clear them from the body to move that stagnant blood. Let's move to some interesting studies that highlight the use of hyssop for the lungs and for asthma. In a 2014 study on mice, they explored hyssop as a potential ally for chronic asthma, a condition rooted in the type 1 allergenic hypersensitivity. And the mice that were given hyssop showed decreased eosinophils in the lung epithelium, which is basically fewer inflammatory cells that drive airway irritation. They also found reduced IgE levels, and IgE is typically elevated when there's allergic responses present, and especially in allergic asthma. So this suggests that hyssop may help regulate the allergic response overall. And the mice given hyssop had reduced mucus secretion from the epithelial cells. And this is important because chronic asthma often involves thick, sticky mucus that's harder to clear. Interestingly, the mice also had higher IgG levels, which are often lower in chronic asthma patients, another sign of its possible immune enhancing effects. And there was another similar study that was done on hyssop in the lungs that showed that, as well as the control, dexamethasone, that it prevented pathological changes in the epithelial lining of the lungs. It prevented the development of particular behaviors, including anxiety exhibition, nose scratching, lethargy, and shortness of breath that occurred in the control group in response to this challenge. So I thought that was really cool. And obviously, mouse studies don't directly correspond to human studies, but it is a helpful clue to how hyssop works in the body and specifically how it works on the endothelial cells in the lungs themselves. Next, let's talk about growing hyssop. It is so easy to grow. I mean, if you've grown lemon balm or peppermint, you can grow hyssop. It grows really well in well-drained soil. It likes a good amount of sun, and anywhere that you would grow most mint family plants, you can grow hyssop. Like most mint family plants, it will spread, so don't plant it somewhere that you don't want it to expand. Hyssop would work well in a pot or in a contained area. Hyssop is a wonderful pollinator plant, so if you're looking to attract butterflies and hummingbirds to your garden, this is a really nice one. And it is a perennial, so it will come back year after year. You don't have to replant this one. Much like our other Lamiaceae, it is a quite hardy plant, and it doesn't even die all the way back in the winter. It will keep its stems up, and then it will just throw up new shoots in the spring. To harvest this plant, you need to wait until it comes into flower, and it has these cute little purple flowers on the top, and all the aerial parts are used. This means the stem, the leaves, and the flower are all medicinal. I like to dry it, and what I do is I just hang it upside down in a little bundle and let it dry, and then I just strip off those leaves, place it in a jar, and then I use it in a lot of different tea blends throughout the year. This herb can also be tinctured, and I find brandy works really nice because the sweetness of the brandy helps to counter some of the bitterness of the plant. Traditionally, this herb was also used in syrups, and I think a syrup blends really well to the bitter taste of it, and it helps to balance it out. And syrups work really nicely for the lungs because they tend to have this a little bit more of a sticky adhesive quality. And if you're looking to use this as a lung remedy, why not try making it into a herbal syrup? Now let's talk about some different formulations and blends and how you can use hyssop. Hyssop works really well in a tea that you're using for digestion. Think about any other aromatic herb in the mint family, blend them together and add something sweet. You can also use this as a rejuvenative herb for your nervous system. If you've been really depleted or exhausted from overworking or from grief, think about adding hyssop to a blend to help stimulate and lift your energy. Some herbs that I would include in this blend might be damiana, some peppermint, lemon balm is good for lifting the spirits, maybe a little bit of linden in the mallow family, so you can have a little bit of a moistening taste and quality to it. And then just a touch of licorice would be nice. So it could look something like this. You could have 25% peppermint, 25% lemon balm, 20% hyssop, 20% linden, and 10% licorice. This would make a really nice uplifting nervine blend. Henriette Kress, another herbalist, she has a recipe on her website for a syrup for cough or bronchitis, and that is equal parts peppermint, hyssop, thyme, and horehound. And Maud Grieve, from her herbal compilation in 1971, offers this recipe for hyssop tea: 1/4 of an ounce of dried hyssop flowers and a pint of boiling water for 10 minutes, sweeten with honey, and take a wine glassful 3 times a day for debility of the chest. I hope that gives you some ideas of how you can use hyssop in your home, for your family, for yourself. This is such a wonderful herb to keep handy because of its aromatic, bitter, and its specific indications for most digestive issues that are related to cold, and most lung conditions that are associated with dryness and stuckness. Don't forget that hyssop is also a wonderful herb for cleansing spaces, and you can boil this on your stove in the winter to create a steam, to clear space in your home, to move out negative emotions, and to just do a general space clearing. Hyssop oil can also be used either as an infused oil or a little bit of the essential oil diffused into a carrier oil on the shoulders and neck for tension, on the belly to help with digestive circulation and stimulation. I hope this is helpful. Cheers to you all. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please add those in the comments section. And as always, it is a pleasure to share the plant medicines with you. Bye. You looking at me, it makes me nervous. You can look at a book, find a book on the shelf and look at it.